Hello, hello, friends. Welcome, welcome. All right, we're about to get started. Ooh, you guys are in the building. Thank you for being here and on time. I will usher you guys in for a second before I start my presentation. So let me know who's in the building. All right. I see Donna, Melanie, Monica, Pamela, Tamika or Tamikia. Thank you so much for being here. And some others are trickling in as well. This is going to be a nice, um, very robust chat today where we're going to be talking about starting the podcast that builds your exit plan. So if you are here to learn how to do that, you are definitely in the right spot. And I'm Michaela. If you haven't met me before and maybe just saw me in an ad, I am your host for today. So let me go ahead and share my screen. And we're going to jump into everything. By the way, can you let me know what brought you here, whether it was an ad, whether you have your own show? I'm just curious. I'm always curious who's in the building and where you are in the process of podcasting right now. So let's go ahead and kick it off. And by the way, this is interactive, so I know I can't see you or talk to you, but please feel free to, pop into the chat. So Monica Pierre says, listening to your podcast. Oh, so thank you for listening. Pamela Stone says, I have my own show. Ooh, awesome. Let me know. What's the name of your show? What's it about? I'd love to know. Alrighty. So while you do that, I will kick us off. Today is all about starting the podcast that builds your exit plan and frees you from the career that you have outgrown or maybe has outgrown you and you've had to pivot real quick, right? And I'm your host, Nikayla Matthews Akome. I'm also the host of the Side Hustle Pro podcast. And you can find me everywhere over on @SideHustlePro. So this class is for you if you are feeling burned out right now, if you're feeling uninspired right now, and basically if you're just ready for a change in your career, if for a myriad of reasons you might be ready for a change in your career. And it's for you if you want to use your voice, and your expertise to open up these new opportunities outside of your 9 to 5 or outside of the career path you've had your whole life. And it's for you if you know you're meant for more, but aren't sure how to make it happen. And you want to build a platform that makes you discoverable to the right people, to the next opportunity, right? So if you're just joining, go on ahead and just drop in the chat what made you join, what made you join today, how'd you hear about it, where you're joining from, all that good stuff. All right. So like I mentioned, you are in the right place right now. If you're in a career that pays your bills, but it drains your energy, it drains your soul, and you want a way to build something of your own, right? That is going to open new doors. It's going to be your ladder to something else. And you're definitely in the right place if you are finally ready to make your expertise, your story, and your voice work for you instead of staying stuck in a career path that no longer feels aligned, instead of letting your voice and your talents be only used for someone else's company, building someone else's dream. We are ready to pivot from that. Okay. And it's also for you if, like I said, you're meant for more. You're called to do more than just what you're doing on this earth. I know many of you're hearing a call in right now. And I know for me, sometimes I don't really know where life is taking me, but I know that I feel just inspired or called to do a certain thing, and that is going to show me where I need to be next. And I'll show you what I mean in a second. So if you know you're meant for more and you want to use podcasting as that bridge from where you are now to the career and the life you actually want, then this is the conversation that we need to be having. You need to be here and we need to be chatting some more. So let me see what folks are putting in the chat. Yadachi says, getting educated about anything about podcasts. Thank you for letting me know. I love your name. Pamela, your podcast is She Shift, empower women 45 and older to rediscover, reignite, and rise to her. What's next? All right. Okay. Tamikia, you haven't started, but you saw my ad. Good to know they're working. Thank you for being here. And some people Yadachi just started Facebook. All right. I'm so glad that you guys are here. So After this class, the purpose is for you to be 100% clear on what it takes to run a podcast that creates the income and opportunities that you want, and the 3 steps to turn your podcast into a platform that builds your exit plan this year. So I don't want you to just be podcasting. I want you to actually be building a larger platform for yourself that's going to propel you into greater opportunities and greater income opportunities. All right. So let me take it back a little bit. I'm Nikayla. In 2016, I launched a podcast called Side Hustle Pro. And it is the first and only podcast that spotlights bold Black women entrepreneurs who have scaled from side hustlers to full-time entrepreneurs. And I grew Side Hustle Pro to over 10 million downloads and multiple 6 figures in sponsorship revenue each and every year. And I did that from my apartment while working a full-time job. So if I can do it, you can do it too. All right. So my full-time job was I worked at NPR. That's National Public Radio, if you're not familiar. And there I led digital marketing for their top podcasts like How I Built This, Code Switch, and so many more. So a lot of your favorites. So I was there at NPR until 2017 when I left my career there to run Side Hustle Pro Media full time. Why? Because I had grown it into a profitable platform. And I want to teach you to do the same. It is possible. Okay. So since then, I've taught over 1,000 podcasters to run their own podcast business. And it is my mission to help podcasters turn their voice into income so that you can walk away from careers that no longer serve you. All right. And also so you can go from just being a podcaster who's creating content to, again, building out a platform, a larger platform. So if that sounds good to you, say awesome in the chat. And while you do that, a little bit of housekeeping. All right. So we'll be here for 60 minutes. I hope you can stick around to the end because you will get to ask your questions in more detail. Just use the Q&A box for me so I can go directly there once I'm into Q&A. Try to give me context too. You know how Pamela asked you, like, hey, tell me a little bit more. Give me all the context that you can so I can be as thorough as I can in my replies. And yes, there will be a replay available, but there are some opportunities. There are some fast action things that I want to give you today. If you want my coaching, that will only be available for the next 48 hours. So definitely know that. All right. And then, as I mentioned, I'll be sharing all the details about Podcast Moguls Group Coaching. So that's where I coach amazing podcasters like yourself, emerging and intermediate podcasters who want to grow their show from podcast to platform. So at the end of this class, I will share more about that if you are ready and interested in joining. All right. So let me take it back for y'all a little bit. Like, how did I get on this path? How did I even learn and become a podcaster? So 10 years ago, this was me. I posted this highlight reel over on Instagram, and this is me graduating with my MBA from the University of Michigan Ross School of Business. And so I look super successful. I have on my cap and gown. I look like the pinnacle of success. But what you don't see, what you can't know from looking at this picture is inside, at this point, I am freaking out because I was at this point rejected from my top choice, Google. I'd interned there, didn't get the full-time offer. And so that meant I was graduating with no job from my top tier MBA program, which I went into with such high hopes. And I was moving back to DC jobless to live with my boyfriend with no income, barely any savings too. And so I felt pretty embarrassed and ashamed. And I actually didn't tell many of my classmates. I pretended like I had it all figured out. I had it all together. And I had a job, but I did not. So once I got back to DC, I said, all right, I need to get my life together. Like I need to have income, right? I got to figure this out. So at that point, I said, I know I want to build my personal brand. This is around 2015 when, blogs are turning into brands and people are really elevating themselves through their likeness. And I said, what is this all about? I didn't even learn this in business school. So I need to figure this out. I wasn't sure what it all entailed. And I did what many of you are doing. So I said, let me follow and learn from people who are further ahead and get this. So I started following online branding coaches. I started investing in learning more about what is this thing all about. At the time, that looked like me turning into Amy Porterfield and Maya Elias. Those were some of the first people I found online. And through what I learned, I decided, okay, let me relaunch my blog. So I relaunched KaylaKSpeaks.com. It's still up if you want to see my humble beginnings. And it was super tacky, y'all. I was just playing around in Canva, not knowing what I was doing. And at that point, I had content, but no real purpose. All right. So again, we are in that phase initially when we all start out. We're just kind of throwing content out there, no real purpose, definitely no platform. But that's okay. That's okay because the important thing was that I got started. If I hadn't done that back in 2015, I wouldn't be where I am today. So that was the first time I really learned. You always hear it, but I really learned that you have to be willing to take the first step, even when you don't really know where it will lead. So for me, I learned that the aha moment that we're all looking for, it actually comes gradually, and it actually comes when you're in motion. It comes with action. That was the biggest key that I unlocked for myself. So I took action. I kept taking action. For me, that action was starting my blog. And I started out with, again, designing everything myself. After several months of blogging, though, I started to see a common thread. I went from writing about any and everything, marketing and marketing trends, because at first I wanted to build my brand to get a job. And I went from that to interviews. I wanted to learn from people who seem to be thriving in corporate, but also were still working on their real passion projects and building out businesses on the side. And I just didn't see those stories everywhere. So I decided, okay, let me start sharing those stories. And I was hooked. I was hooked. I loved sharing the stories of Black women side hustlers and entrepreneurs. And so for me, that's when the idea for my podcast, Side Hustle Pro, was born. So let me know in the comments how what inspired your podcast topics or podcast if you've launched it. But for me, it started through that action of first just writing anything, then interviewing people and realizing, oh, hey, these are the stories I love hearing about the most. And a year before launching Side Hustle Pro, by the way, I didn't even know what a podcast was. I had not listened to a podcast until someone by chance told me about The Read. And I'm like, what's that? Where do I listen to it? And because of that, I learned about podcasts. Again, I fell in love listening to it while I was washing the dishes, doing laundry. And then there I was a year later, actually turning my own blog into a podcast. A year later, in the first 7 days after launching Side Hustle Pro, I landed in the top charts. This is Side Hustle Pro on the left in the top 10 in marketing. And then on the right, number 37 in business. And if you have a keen eye, you'll see that I'm right above Amy Porterfield, who was my virtual mentor, AKA invested in her programs and, came out the gate implementing all the things that I'd learned online. And then there was launching in the top 37 in business. So I kept going. Side Hustle Pro was featured on Apple. There it is on the left above new and noteworthy, and in the right, in the bold women category. And so what do you do when things are going right? You go harder. I went hard on promotion that summer. I got t-shirts printed up and I went to every conference I could. At the time I was living in DC. Any conference that came to DC, I was there with my t-shirt on, trying to get people to interview, introducing myself. And it was a lot of fun. This was a really fun time in my life. I also tried launching a shop selling the t-shirt. So as I'm testing and as I'm experimenting, I start to realize that, hey, I'm onto something. Like the reception is great. People are loving the content. It's going up the charts. If I took this seriously, I could leave my job. And the quote I'm pointing to in this picture says, knowing what you already know will keep you where you already are. That was another epiphany for me. I realized I had learned all I could about just general education leading up to this moment. But if I wanted to get somewhere else and get to the point where I could quit my job, I needed to learn more than what I already knew. So I knew I wanted to do this and I knew that I wanted to make money from it. So I started studying podcast monetization. And this is what you do whenever you want to learn how to do something, learn how to do what someone else has done for the most part. You have got to study whatever that looks like for you. But for me, it was investing so that I could make some more money. right? So I went to conferences and I invested in courses to learn how to pitch sponsors. I decided that was going to be the first revenue stream in podcasting that I explore. And at the time, I saw that there was a 2-day event sponsorship intensive that was going to be in DC. I invested $1,197 in that intensive. Why? Because I told myself, if spending this money will result in me now having the skills and knowledge of how to pitch sponsors, then if all I do is make that money back, it will be worth it. And again, this intensive was event sponsorship. It wasn't even podcast specific, but I was just eager. I was eager to learn anything at all about sponsorship, pitching a sponsor. And so it was like the biggest investment I'd ever made in myself for my business, right? My business at the time wasn't making any money. So for me to spend money on an intensive, that was a big bet on myself. And I did it. And then 6 months after launching my podcast, I pitched my very first sponsor, Colt. And I earned my first $4,000 podcast sponsorship contract. Now, I don't know about you, but 4,000 is nothing to sneeze at. The first try out the gate, like that's salary right there, right? Like that was proof of concept to me that if I keep doing this, and let's say I apply 2x the effort that I did last time or 3x the effort, what will come of it then? So again, the wheels started to turn, things started to click. I went even harder. And by December 2017, I was able to quit my job to podcast full time. This is the episode I did about it back in December 2017. You can go back and listen. I quit my job to be a full-time podcaster. And Side Hustle Pro took off from there, featured on the Today Show, featured in Oprah Magazine, featured in Forbes. And I say all this to show y'all what's possible when you really, really bet on yourself, but also first invest, take the steps to learn and then implement. Everything that I learned, I implemented. So that is a key thing as well. Everything that I learned, I implemented. And so by 2022, Side Hustle Pro was inducted into the Podcast Hall of Fame. What a blessing this was to receive this honor. Just such a full circle moment because I started my podcast on Libsyn and Libsyn honored me with the Podcast Hall of Fame award. So it all came though because I started building my exit plan with the podcast. The podcast was the exit plan. It was my exit from NPR. It was my exit from the traditional rat race. It is the plan. So I went from graduating with no job and no money to the Podcast Hall of Fame. All right. Ooh, I see some really juicy comments coming in. I can't wait to read it. Yadachi and Pamela. All right, I'm gonna get to you real soon. Okay. So the truth is, everybody, like the truth is that if you are here today, I know one thing for sure, you don't just want to build your exit plan. You don't just want to get paid to podcast, make money from your podcast. I know for sure that is not just what you're here for. You want freedom, okay? That's the core of what it is. And let's be clear, freedom can look different for everybody else. For some people, freedom is a job they know they will always have, so they'll always be able to be good and their family will be good. That is a freeing thought, right? Even though that don't really exist, that's a free concept. But freedom can also look like freedom from the corporate hamster wheel, freedom from the fear of layoffs, freedom from financial uncertainty. And the biggest way to have that freedom is always going to be a different revenue stream, right? So freedom from financial uncertainty, freedom to work and live on your own terms. Again, when you're not just dependent on one income source, you are going to have freedom to work and live on your own terms, and freedom in your schedule. This one was huge for me. I don't know about y'all, but I'm a mom. I'm a mom of 2 young kids under 5 right now. And having the flexibility to run to my daughter's daycare if she gets sick, or take my son to ninja class and not have to worry about asking anyone for permission to do so is huge. I design my work and my life around now being a mom because I enjoy enriching my kids. So this was a huge one for me. And even when I was working at NPR and I would see my colleagues like struggling to figure out how much FMLA they could get, family medical leave they could get to have a maternity leave, and borrowing weeks from people, I said to myself, I do not want to do this. I want to figure this out before I have kids. And that's what I did. So for you, I know you've probably already been trying to figure this out. Like some of you already have your podcast, right? And you're probably wondering, should I take podcasting more seriously? How do I grow a podcast? How do I actually make money from it? Is it worth all the effort? Yes, yes, it is. And how do I really use this to shift my life path, right? Comment yes if you've wondered anything at all. All right, Monica Pierre wants freedom in my schedule. Hello. That's the biggest thing. That right there is the biggest thing that has been a game changer for me, especially now having a family. All right. So these are some of the questions that start to spin in your head when you're figuring things out, like when you're figuring out how to take a different life path, when you're figuring out how to get an exit out of these structured paths. So you've also probably even tried starting your podcast already, posting on Instagram, posting on LinkedIn, dancing on TikTok, maybe all the things, right? But the results haven't been great. And when the results aren't great, you are tempted to start thinking, maybe I'm not cut out for this. You're tempted to start doubting yourself and say, I don't know what I'm doing. I need to stick to what I already know and what I already do. And that is also a normal part of the process, the self-doubt, the second guessing. But what I want you to know is that the results haven't been great because your mind is all over the place. And your mind is all over the place because it's noisy out here. Everybody has a podcast. Everybody's telling you how to do everything. Everyone's shouting information at you. It's overwhelming. It's what's it called? It's overstimulating, right? And that's when you need to lock in on a key voice that you know knows what they're talking about, has the receipts, and can help you. You're going to have to learn to tune out the noise in this process, because all that matters is that you understand the real power of podcasting. So here's the real reason you haven't figured it out yet, because you don't know the real power of podcasting. And I say this because when most people are motivated to start a podcast, they're motivated by what they think will be the benefit of it. And they're not even realizing what the real benefit is. So if, let's say, you are motivated to do something, but the actual motivation isn't that strong of a motivator, like, you are going to end up falling off, right? However, if you truly understand the power and you're motivated by the right thing, that's going to keep you engaged. So the real power of podcasting that should be your motivator are these three things. Number one, it's the most powerful networking tool you didn't know you had. All right. I right now have such a powerful network of amazing Black women entrepreneurs. And it only came because I reached out to them to interview them on my show. I've been able to tap into their knowledge, tap into their expertise, tap into their network, simply because we built that rapport during the conversation. And I could have never met all of them, in no matter how many networking events or conferences I went to. They're in different cities, some of them in different countries. It all came because of the podcast. And right now, I feel confident reaching out to anybody, honestly, because of the reputation and portfolio I have of who I've spoken to. And then the other real power of podcasting is that it is your bridge from where you are to the career and the business that you want, one conversation at a time. Like, let's say that you wanted to have a conversation with someone amazing in your field, right? That you want to interview on your show. What do you think would be most successful? You reaching out and saying, hey, can I ask you some questions about how you did it? Just for me personal, like, can I have 30 minutes of your time? Or, hi, I'm so-and-so from the XYZ podcast. That is the first and only podcast to cover blah, 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 blah. We've been featured in this and that. We've interviewed this and that person. Would you like to come on the show? Which do you think you'd have the better chance connecting with them on? Let me know in the comments. One or two, the picking your brain approach or the interview approach. Two, exactly. So when you're trying to figure out that exit plan, being able to have a conversation with people and they're happy to do it because everyone loves talking about themselves and getting to promote themselves and all of that. But also, you get to learn. You get to learn and you get to connect with them and understand what opportunities are out there for you or how you can do what they're doing. So that's the second real power of podcasting, very slept on. And then finally, it's your launch pad. It's your launch pad to the sponsorships, to the clients, to the speaking gigs, and the partnerships that fit your next chapter. Anything that you want to do right now, you need a podcast to bring people into your business. So most people will never ever come across your website just by chance. They won't. But if you have a podcast about the topic that, let's say you have a client-based business in, or you want to work with a brand and they're like, okay, what's your platform? You now have something to offer them. You now have something to attract them. So that's why you need a podcast. It is your launch pad. So these three things are the real power of podcasting. And this should be your motivator. This is what should be your motivator. Above and beyond the money piece yet, you need to understand how critical it is to be able to build a powerful network from your home and not have to be trying to go all over the place to every event. Oh, can I meet this person? Like, no, you can do this from home. So if you knew the real power of podcasting, you would stop playing and really prioritize your podcast right now. By the end of this should be the number one priority for you for the rest of this year and definitely for 2026. All right. Because the good is that you already have what it takes. Your skills, your story, your voice are enough to start. What you've been through, what you've seen, your lived experience is enough to start. So you don't need a huge audience. You don't need no fancy studio. You don't need a journalism degree. You don't need any kind of Instagram aesthetic. You just need the right steps to position your podcast as that bridge to your next chapter. So now we're about to get into the steps. Comment bridge if you're ready to learn these steps that are the bridge. Shannon says, yes. bridge, Queen Mansa, yes. Let's get into Queen Manish. Is that Manish? Okay. Let's get into it. All right. So the 3 steps to turn your podcast into your exit plan. Here we go. Step number 1 is build a podcast that gets found by the right people. That is the first step, y'all. Okay. Because what holds most people back is starting these casual, just chatting podcasts with friends. It looks so popular online, right? It looks so trendy and right. That's how you podcast. And then to top it off, most people give it this vague title or this clever inside joke they think is so cute. And the problem is no one's searching for that. No one is searching for that. So off the bat, you have started a podcast that no one could find. All right. And then what also holds most people back is staying broad, right? So you don't box yourself in. But in reality, you're boxing out your audience instead, because again, they can't find you and then they find you and they don't know what your show is about. All right. So you got 0.000002 seconds to connect with people. And if you make it confusing, the opportunity is gone. So you cannot make this mistake. All right. And then what also holds most people back, especially right now, is jumping into the in-person video podcasting. Pressuring yourself to pour all this money into gear and setups and studios without a clear plan to grow or monetize. People are skipping the step. You have to know how you're going to make money before you start spending a lot of money. There's no reason to go into debt before you have even one income stream for your show. All right. So no matter what you see online, I'm going to dispel that myth and show you exactly what you should do. So this is the number one mistake, though. These things that I just mentioned, these are the number one mistakes that keep most podcasters stuck at just content, at just podcasts, instead of building an exit plan. And here's why it holds you back. Again, people who need your show, they can't even find you. And then when they do find you, it's unclear what your show is about. And then another thing is you end up spending a lot of money on the wrong things before you get started. And I can't tell you how many people are thinking about the wrong things before they get started. So I, obviously work with a lot of women. People will tell me, oh, I need to get my hair and makeup done. I need to hire a makeup artist. And it's like, understand you need to look good, but you need to figure out some cost-effective ways to do this podcast if you want to be a profitable podcast business and platform. Now, let's get into what you can actually do to not make these mistakes, okay? So here's how to build a podcast that opens doors. This is step number 1, all right? Getting found. So, your podcast can help the right people discover you. It can help the right people discover your story. It can help the right people discover your expertise. And here's how you do it. So, this is Erica McAfee. She is a Podcast Moguls coaching client, and she came into Podcast Moguls with this as her podcast name, the Erica M. McAfee podcast. This is what a lot of people do when they're starting out. They think, well, I want to build my personal brand, so I'm going to name the show after me. Nice thought. But here's why this won't work, because people aren't searching for your name, okay? The only people searching for your name are your family, friends, or stalkers or employers who are Googling you. You know what I mean? So as you can see, in the beginning, her old title lacked clarity on the audience and the mission, and it was harder for the right listeners to find her based on what they're searching. And then once you launch, you get into that mode of focusing on just creating episodes and putting out content and not building the platform. So she was in that zone when she came to me. And together, through the modules, through our live coaching, she was able to rebrand to Sisters in Loss, because her show is all about women who have experienced pregnancy loss and grief and just hearing and connecting with their community. So what a pity it was when people could not find her, because her show is so needed and so impactful. And so once she rebranded, the title is the beginning. Okay. Your title does not have to be verbatim everything you talk about, but it needs to grab your perfect listener. So Sisters in Loss, that will come up when people are searching for Black women who've gone through loss, sisters who've gone through loss, right? And then you'll see her smiling face. You'll see the African print and vibrant African print jacket that she's wearing. And you'll say, what's this about, right? And then her description and her titles will do the rest of the work. That is the aim of getting found. That's how you get found, because her description has all those keywords in it about grief and pregnancy loss, and her titles reinforce those keywords. So the search engine optimization happens within her overall portfolio on the show, and she gets found. So with the new title, it was clear, it was mission-driven positioning, it instantly speaks to the audience she wants to reach, and it became discoverable. The key thing is it became discoverable versus her old title of just her name. It led to more downloads, opportunities, and partnerships as a result. So that is what is so important about getting found. So Shannon says you'd love to connect with her. That's awesome. I hope that I'm enabling discovery through today's lesson. And the key thing to remember from that step 1 of getting found is when your audience knows exactly who you serve and why, your podcast stops being just content. Your podcast stops being just for you, and it starts becoming a platform for growth and income. It starts becoming a platform for your audience, which is who you really are building for. You're building for other people, all right, not yourself. Now, one last explanation of how you get found. So this was Lori Tharps, who's also a Podcast Moguls OG alum, and she came into the program with this as her podcast title, My American Melting Pot. And as you can see by even the artwork, right? It's like, whoa, what's going on? This could be about a lot of different things here. What is going on? What does that mean? What are we talking about? Okay. So it lacked clear focus and audience alignment. The episodes covered many topics, making it harder for the right listeners to connect. When you cover many topics, people will tune in for the one that's about them and then tune right out. They won't come back because they'll say, oh, this show is not really for me. Just this episode was for me. So that is the mistake and the problem that you set yourself up with. Then you, again, get into that focus on producing content. Once you've launched, you're like, I'm good. Everything's good over there. Let me just get into producing content regularly now. And again, that means you get into the zone of just routine rather than growth strategy. So that's where Lori was when she said, I need to come on over to Nicaila and get some strategy. And that's what we did. So together, Lori was able to rebrand, and it took her some time to really let go of her beloved My American Melting Pot because it was a blog and it was a whole part of her identity. But once she really locked into, hey, I actually want to talk to writers because she's an author and professor. She said, I want to talk to writers. I want to help writers understand how to actually get their book published and marketed and to do well because she's published more than one book that has done really well and sold well. And so she created the Read, Write, and Create podcast. Again, the title and imagery alone, that stops her audience, her perfect listener in their tracks, right? And then her description and her episode titles does the work of coming up in search engine optimization, where she says, I am a BIPOC writing coach. This is the podcast for BIPOC writers where we will discuss. Then her episode titles will cover different episodes and topics that people are searching for in her niche. So this is now clear niche positioning that speaks directly to her target audience. It streamlined branding and messaging, so it made the show instantly more discoverable. And it led to stronger audience engagement and opened the door for growth opportunities. So she is now able to funnel people from her podcast into her writing sanctuary, which is her coaching group, and also her one on one clients and writing retreats. So when your podcast speaks directly to the people you want to reach, it creates that platform to attract and make opportunities and also drives impact. You notice something about these two podcasters? Their shows are so impactful. It's not all about money and growth, it is about impact. You can do both at the same time, but you got to get found. You got to get found to have the impact you want in life. Okay. So when people tell me podcasts don't make money, I tell them podcasts that don't make money, they aren't discoverable, plain and simple. And the people who need your message the most can't find you. That's why you aren't making money. All right. So you have to make it easy for people to find you. And it comes from doing the things that we discuss, right? If people can't find your podcast, they can't listen and they definitely can't buy. So you have to do that trifecta of your podcast name, your podcast description, and episode titles. Those are your discoverability power tools. Do not take them lightly. Do not underestimate or just gloss them over. They have to be working for you. All right. Because discovery drives downloads and downloads are going to drive your income. Now, let's get into step 2. So, step 1 was getting found. That's how you start to build the podcast. That will be your exit plan. Okay. And step 2 is grow your audience now by deeply understanding who they are and what they need. You got to understand the audience. All right. So, what holds most people back when it comes to this is pouring all your energy into that launch, pouring all the energy into the colors, the logo, the look, the IG page, like all the busy work of it, and then barely promoting it each week. Okay. And then what also holds most people back is skipping the work of truly getting to know your audience. Remember, when you are starting a podcast, yes, it often comes from an idea that you want to hear and see. And sometimes you're even in your own, usually you're in your own target audience, but it's not just for you. You can't just have your blinders on and only think about what you want because you're not the only person that's going to listen to this. You want other people to listen to this. So that means you can't skip this work. You have to understand what your audience cares about, where they spend time, what they're searching for inside of these apps to find your show. And then what also holds most people back is treating their audience like a faceless group, like all women, all moms, Black women, Black moms, men, like just very blanket, sweeping everybody under the same arch. And that's just not how the world works. Okay. You have to think of your audience, your perfect listener, which I drive that home in Podcast Moguls. Everyone has to start by identifying their perfect listener because you need to know that these are real people with specific goals, specific challenges, and specific interests. For me, for Side Hustle Pro, my perfect listener's name is Janelle. And I know Janelle like the back of my hand. Okay. She's living in New York, working for Amex. She wants to start a shea butter business. She got her MBA from Stern, and she, loves the finer things in life. So she's not about to just quit her job without a viable business. And so she enjoys listening to my show to get all this knowledge. Okay. I know Janelle. When I create content, I am talking to her. And that's how specific and granular you got to get. So here's the smart approach to all of this, okay? Understand your audience to grow your audience. Because I know Janelle, I've been able to replicate Janelle and grow hundreds of thousands and millions of Janelles to listen to the show. So, and this is what I teach again. So this is another Podcast Moguls alum, and her name is Shanitria. She's the host of the Blowing Mama podcast, one of my favorite podcast names of all time. And she is doing exactly what I just talked about. She got to know her audience deeply. Of course, it started with her. She was genuinely interested in this topic. But once she got to know her people, look what happens. Okay. So Shanitra grew her audience using the Side Hustle Pro OMG formula, which I teach inside of Podcast Moguls. So it's a formula where I go over this strategy to understand who your audience is on Instagram, because Instagram is still one of the best platforms to grow your podcast on. All right. So she was able to clarify her message, build content that resonated deeply with her audience, and position her podcast for explosive growth and her Instagram page for explosive growth. So here's what happened next. Okay. She actually said this herself. This is a screenshot. She posted this inside her IG story one time when I was getting ready to promote this class. And she said, Side Hustle Pro is an amazing podcast coach. As someone who is one of her Podcast Mogul students, I can truly say she helped me get Blunt Blowing Mama podcast off the ground, grow BBM's IG page. I had only 3K followers when I started her program. And through her techniques, I've grown organically to over 21,000 engaged followers. Because of Podcast Moguls, I was able to find my tribe. And she even gave me helpful advice when I started BBM clothing line too. She really knows her stuff. And if you want to really build a successful podcast, then her Podcast Moguls program is worth the investment. And I share that because of for her to say that and for to show you where she came from and what's possible. It's just like I just had to share that because Shanitra grew from 3,000 to 21,000 Instagram followers by applying the strategies learned inside Podcast Moguls. And that was in her initial 8 weeks, her initial 3 months in the program, right? And she didn't stop there. She has gone on to surpass the teacher. Okay, she has more IG followers than me. Her audience kept growing as she stayed consistent, and also because she knew this person so well. She knew this woman and what this woman needed from her, that reassurance, that feeling seen, right? So now she's grown an engaged community of 120,000 plus who now are not only able to discover her podcast, but they can listen, share, and invest when she has workshops and a membership community. Whenever she's ready to launch something, she now has a community to launch to. That is priceless. All right. So podcasts that struggle to make money often have another thing in common. They don't truly know their audience. They just don't know their audience. They skip that whole step. All right. And if you don't know who you're talking to and what they need, it's going to be impossible to sell products, to secure sponsors, or to grow your business. Sponsors want to know who they're talking to. You can't sell products into a void. You can't shout into a void. You have to know what people want and why they want it and speak to those pain points. So that is why it's so important to know who you're talking to. Now let's get into step 3. I'm gonna pause for a second. Let me know. Give me a 3 if you are enjoying this and ready for that next step. Shannon says, that makes so much sense. Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, Christina. Yes, there's so many steps that people just skip. And when I realized people were skipping these steps, I'm like, okay, I have to teach this because it's how it works. This is how the business side of podcasting works, okay? So step three is to start small and test different income streams. When you're ready to make money, you have to start small, test different income streams, and track what resonates most with your audience. So the business side of podcasting involves exploration, right? And that's hard for some people because what tends to hold a lot of people back is this fear of being seen trying and failing, this fear that so and so from middle school, however many years or decades ago, is going to have something to say. And what I always tell people, and even myself, is name that person, name the voice. Who is it in your head that is making you press pause when you need to press play? Who is it? Once you realize who the voice is, oh, that's my mom. Oh, that's my cousin. Oh, that's so and so from fourth grade. Then you can talk back to them. Talk back and say, oh, all right, I know what you're gonna say, but I don't care. And here's why. Because I know me and I know what I'm gonna do. And you just don't have the courage. Like whatever you have to say, but name that person and get over that fear of being seen trying and failing because it's part of the process. And then what also holds most people back is the fear that no one will buy. Listen, all right, let me get rid of that fear for you too. Yes, there are going to be times when you launch things and people will not buy and you will survive. Okay? It happens to everybody. It's part of the process. So you have to get over that hump. Remember, I told you I started out, I launched different things. I launched merch, I launched different programs. I was testing out revenue streams in the beginning. Sponsorships always, that took off, but then figuring out my other revenue streams, it took time. And that's fine. It's part of the process. People don't even remember the stuff I did that didn't work. So the last thing that I see holding people back is the fear of wasting money. And yes, that can be a valid fear, like, oh, am I going to stick with this if I launch, or, all these other things that you tell yourself. But number one, that is why I emphasize getting a coach. If nothing else, you need some accountability and strategy. All right. Accountability and strategy at the same time. It's the reason why LeBron has a coach and Steph has a coach and doesn't just coach themselves. Like, yes, they're motivated, but they also need that person and that guide in their ear to just keep them at the highest level. And that is why you get a coach. So if you're afraid of wasting money, not reach out, but be able to ask your coach, does it make sense to invest in this right now, or should I wait? And I just had a one-on-one strategy call with someone yesterday who we went through. I provide as a fast action bonus when you join my full equipment rundown, right? And I share the low, mid, and high tier investment options for equipment. Like you can have a low tier mic, a mid tier, and a high tier. And guess what? As I was telling her, I've used all three of these, and all three of these have been a part of my journey, because you don't have to start with the high tier when you're starting out. The high tier paid for itself as my 5-year anniversary gift. You feel me? Like you need to understand and work with a coach to make sure that you're just being strategic at every phase of the journey. So get over that fear by working with someone. So here's your next move. All right. You are going to launch an offer, start testing, and let your audience show you what sells. What does that mean? It means launching your first moneymaker. And an example of a first moneymaker can be like an ebook. Okay, or guide with useful information. Think about something that people always ask you for. Like put it in the chat. What do people always want your advice on? Or you just do so well that people are always reaching out to you in the DMs or email to pick your brain about? That could be an ebook. And if you're not comfortable charging for it yet, it could be a free ebook that ends up being something that gets people onto your email list. So these are some of the beginning ones that I did. I did some ebooks when I was starting out trying to figure it out, and went from there. And then you can also do one-on-one coaching in an area of expertise. So coaching doesn't have to be this whole, like, think of it as you have information and your time is valuable. So if people want to know something, I was just talking to another podcaster about this the other day. So she is just an investing and financial whiz, and she is a little bit burned out right now of the whole, trying to sell people to give them her course, because guess what? People want you, right? I told her people want you. why don't you offer up some time on your calendar? Because sometimes people just want to say, hey, here's what's going on in my financial world. What do you think? Like, tell me your thoughts, right? And they would be willing to pay you rather than having to search for the best this and that person, stranger from the internet, when they already trust you and they truly need your advice because they don't know what to do next. Okay. So think about, again, what's something that people always want your perspective on that you could offer up some time. This is my Calendly. So this is what I use when I have designated time on my calendar, and you can set the times you want. You don't have to give free range. You can say Monday through Wednesdays from 5 to 7 p.m. or whatever it is. You could say only one per day. You know what I mean? To really just start to information gather while still charging for your time. So that's another podcast moneymaker. Then, of course, you can level up to creating a course. And I love courses, and here's why. I created my own courses, and here's why. All of my courses, from Podcast Moguls to Master the Gram, they were requested by my audience. People came to me and said, Nicaila, how are you doing this? How do you grow and monetize your podcast? Or they said, Nicaila, how did you grow your Instagram so fast? And how are you doing this and getting these brand deals? And hence came Master the Gram, right? So I listened, and you want to listen as well. That's why the one-on-ones are really good, because you get to listen, right? And then develop based on what you're hearing that people need. So I developed my course out of a need that I saw in my audience. And I love courses because after a while, the world keeps going, and we've only gotten so much education from the traditional education system. If you've gone through it and you've graduated, like, if you only stay with that level of information, you won't be able to manage this world, right? Look what's going on now. We have AI, we have this and that. You have to keep learning. So that's why courses are so needed, so that people can have continuing education. And that is what I love about courses. There's something that you know that you are an expert at because you keep doing it, that you need to help and share with people. And a course is the perfect way to do it. But it's a later step, okay? After you've done your information gathering, don't launch a course unless it's a need. Another thing you can do is create products. Create products that your listeners love and need. For Shanitria, that looked like creating her t-shirts that everyone would see her wearing and say, hey, I want one of those, blah, blah, blah. So again, listening to that need. I've seen other podcasters launch journals. I've seen people launch, different pens and equipment, or, accessories for podcasters. There's so many things that you can develop based on what your audience wants and knows and loves. So think about that as well as a potential moneymaker. And by the way, these are just the tip of the iceberg. There's so many ways to make money as a podcaster. There's so many ways to structure your exit plan, but these are just some examples. And then, of course, there's sponsorships, right? So pitching brands that your listeners will love and need is something that I love to teach, and I teach inside of Podcast Moguls. And this is another screenshot from OG mogul Tolu. So this is Tolu Garcia. She launched a podcast, UI Narrative, that's user interface. And she came in with just ideas. She did not have a show when she joined Podcast Moguls. And she went from not having a show to going through the module on refining your topic, refining your name, deciding on launching a show all about user interface design and careers for people of color, because she doesn't see a lot of people who look like her in her work. And so through launching this show, Google came knocking on her door because they were trying to hire and get in front of more people of color who are in tech, who want to work in user interface design. And so they actually found her, right? She did the number one step. She got found. Okay. And they found her, emailed her, and asked to sponsor her show. They asked her to sponsor her show. She didn't even have to pitch them. So I distinctly remember that email when she was like, Nicaila, Google just reached out. Like, what do I do? What do I say? And that's the benefit of having a coach as well, because I walked her through, all right, you don't need to do this on the first call. Okay. First you take the call, and here are the steps. And it was just such a full circle moment for her to go from this to sponsorship. So that is definitely a revenue stream as well. And then, of course, you can use your podcast as a magnet to attract clients, a magnet for clients. Discovery, again, is going to be your main focus here. Once you are discovered, you'll be able to have clients for whatever kind of business and service-based business that you have. That's what happened to Lori. She said, I launched a podcast using my moguls training that is pretty much a sales funnel to attract creative writing students and coaching clients. I am seriously following the Nicaila Matthews Okome methodology, and I'm continuing to see results and growth in my business. Later this year, I'll be hosting my first writing retreat in the south of Spain. So Lori is living a dream life. She was able to start a podcast that now is her full-time business and attract clients. And that's what I want for you as well. This is her writing sanctuary, by the way, and a few podcast moguls have joined this as well. I mean, it's just amazing. Even the name, that's why you need a writing coach too, because like even the name on her writing community, it just makes you want to join. Who doesn't want to be in a sanctuary, right? So she uses her podcast as this magnet to attract coaching clients and group coaching members of her sanctuary. And then she also has retreats. And then finally, the last one I'll touch on, I think this is the last one, because again, there's so many different kind of streams you can do. And let me know your questions on this in the chat as well. But you can also create a paid subscription for your podcast. Nowadays, you can even work out exclusive deals with platforms like Patreon, like you can launch exclusively for a set period if your podcast concept is strong enough, or you can have a community, a safe space, a sanctuary of sorts for your podcast listeners and viewers who want to take the conversation even deeper and don't want to post publicly on like a YouTube comment or something like that. And that's what I love about communities for their podcasters. The Friend Zone does this really well. That's a podcast with 3 hosts, and they have weekly live sessions with their Patreon subscribers. They do distinct things that are only for their subscribers, and that's what makes people subscribe. So this is another revenue stream to consider. All right. But no matter what revenue stream you choose, you're going to have to evaluate and grow. Meaning your first moneymaker, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be all buttoned up. In fact, I encourage you to do it bad, do it ugly, because that is going to get you out of your head and into motion. Do it bad, do it ugly. It just needs to offer value, offer education, be created with integrity, and then be created with the audience's best interest in mind. So then you're going to be able to get feedback early, get feedback often. The earlier you get an L, or the earlier your audience is just like crickets, the earlier okay, that wasn't a good idea, versus sitting on it for a year, like I'm going to launch this thing and then getting crickets then, right? So just launch it early so you get that feedback. Then you're able to improve your offers and go from there. So the third thing about podcasts that don't make money don't test enough. And then they give up after the first few streams don't work. And you can't make money if you're not continually putting in effort, evaluating, growing. The first few streams, they're probably not going to work. So you have to get that evaluation muscle up. All right. And then refine, refine, refine. This is exactly why I created Podcast Moguls Coaching. This right here, the monetization piece eludes so many podcasters. The fundamentals and the foundational piece, it eludes so many podcasters. I started seeing it amongst my podcast peers that I started out with, that they were not able to truly build their show out into a platform in the way I was. And then when I had the conversations, I realized the pieces of the foundation that they were missing. And so this is why I created Podcast Moguls. I want to help you build a podcast that becomes your exit plan so that you can create the freedom, the income, and the impact you've been dreaming about, so you can have not just a podcast, but a platform. So inside of Podcast Moguls Group Coaching, I teach all of my proven strategies to podcasters who want to turn their voice into their next chapter and their next income stream using their podcast. That is what we do. Okay. So option 1, you can definitely keep trying to DIY your podcast yourself with tips gathered all over social media and YouTube and all that noise. And then option 2 is you can work with me. All right. You can work with me and you can decide to make podcasting a priority, get my coaching, get my business acumen, and get the exact steps of what to do when. So this is what I invite y'all all into right now. You're invited to join Podcast Moguls. Okay. Let me share a little bit more about Podcast Moguls, and then I'll drop the link. So let's just talk a little bit more, right? So Podcast Moguls for you is that Podcast Moguls is for you if you want to turn your podcast or podcast idea right now into the foundation of your exit plan. So if you want to learn my proven strategies to grow, monetize, and leverage your show into real opportunities, that's what this is for. And you get that direct access to my business strategies, my podcast frameworks through the monthly live coaching and our private community. And we sometimes have special guests as well. And then you get to be surrounded by this network of other ambitious podcasters who are growing, monetizing, and building freedom together. So now you can just stop guessing completely about what works, and then actually spend your energy on executing. Start executing a clear, tested roadmap. So if you want someone to push you into action and be your strategic advisor every step of the way, that is what Podcast Moguls is for. And then I invite you to come on down. I'm about to share some fast action bonuses for those who join today and in the next 48 hours. But before that, I just want to share this. I have to share this image that I saw that it just encapsulates everything I feel about Podcast Moguls, which is you don't learn to swim by reading about water. That is podcasting in a nutshell. If you're not careful, you can get into the mode of just doing a lot of learning, a lot of equipment research, a lot of research. And the truth is that you don't actually learn podcasting by reading about podcasting. You learn it through action. And I'm the coach, I'm the swim coach who's going to be there to push you into the water and then tell you, nope, this is how you do it. Nope, breathe, relax, right? You know, everyone remembers swim lessons. And so I'm here to be your strategic advisor every step of the way. This week alone, I've spoken to podcast moguls who have wanted to touch base on a sponsorship strategy, outreach strategy, who wanted to touch base on a launch strategy, who wanted to touch base on equipment methods. I have touched base with people about everything. And then we have talked about the funnel for that's going to be for their business, for them to make money. It goes on and on because I've been there. Next year makes 10 years into podcasting for me. And next year will make 9 years into full-time entrepreneurship for me through my podcast. So the program encapsulates 3 parts. So part 1 is the course itself. Now, this is where you can go in on demand at any point and reference the 9-module podcast transformation curriculum. So this includes video lessons, tutorials, templates, swipe files, guides. And then part 2 is the community. That's our private community where you can ask your questions. You can get answers outside of our group coaching calls. Whenever you have a question, you can post your wins or your challenges and get my real-time feedback and chime in from the community as well. And then part 3 is that live coaching. So we meet monthly for live video group coaching calls with me. Instead of just seeing me, you'd see everybody, but it's with me. No one else coaches. You receive personal guidance from me. You know, you get to come in like we're having a coaching call each and every time because I answer every single question and I spend time on every single question. We don't rush it. We spend our time to get you through whatever blocks or challenges or questions you have. So that is the program. These are the 3 parts of it, right? And I want you to meet Shirley McAlpine of the She's Got Drive podcast. This is what she had to share about her experience. And she said when she joined the program, I had at that point 25,000 downloads. And in the last 3 months, I'm now at 46,000 downloads. Her strategy absolutely works. So if you're not paying attention, like Shirley came in and within 3 months, she'd almost doubled her downloads based on my strategy. She'd already been podcasting. She plateaued. She came in and she was able to double those downloads within 3 months. Then this is Fritz of the Coin Gamma podcast. So Fritz came in and he just genuinely enjoys talking about cryptocurrency and coins. This is what his podcast was about. He hoped to leverage it to get a job, which is what he ended up doing. And he has, you know, a background. He's a Wharton MBA and all this other stuff. And so he wasn't into like being like a social media influencer or anything, but because of following the steps that I teach inside of Podcast Moguls, what did his podcast do? It was a magnet to opportunities. It was a magnet. Okay. He said, I was able to speak at over 5 conferences last year, even being flown in internationally to speak at conferences. It all came because of the podcast. And when you're trying to figure out your exit plan, being able to be seen as a thought leader and be flown out or flown in and tapped for opportunities, it builds your confidence, it builds your clarity, it really helps you understand where you need to go next. So this is just so critical and one of the top 3 benefits of having a podcast. So let's get into what you're getting inside of Podcast Moguls, okay? So inside of Podcast Moguls, you're getting monthly live coaching sessions. That in and of itself is a $4,000 value. What that means is you pay one time for Podcast Moguls, way less than $4,000. And the value alone of just the coaching you get from me is $4,000. Why? Because you have lifetime access as a Podcast Moguls. But let's say you only came to 4 sessions, right? That's 4 hours. A one-on-one with me for 4 hours is $4,000. Okay. For like one session is $1,000. So 4 of those, you're getting a $4,000 value just within the live coaching aspect itself. But of course, you're going to come to more than 4. You have lifetime access. There are people who joined in 2018 who still come back, right? So that is like a no-brainer. Then you also get annual private community access. What that means is instead of paying monthly, like some podcast communities charge you $197 a month, every single month, forever. You pay annually. You do not get any kind of lifetime membership, right? Instead of having to deal with that, when you're in Podcast Moguls, everything is included with your one payment for life. And then you're also going to get all of my sponsorship pitch letters and media kits tailored for podcasting, tailored for what works now, tailored calculators so you understand what to charge and how to approach sponsors. And you get all of that as well inside of Podcast Moguls. Now, you know that for me, I spent $1,197 to learn sponsorships and pitching and all of that. And now here you get this customized understanding of podcast sponsorship, which is a whole different ballgame, whole different calculators. You get all that inside of Podcast Moguls, and the value of that by itself is $1,197. And you're not going to even pay that for Podcast Moguls. All right. Plus, you're also getting guest pitch templates. These are the emails that worked like a charm for me when I didn't know any of these people, when my podcast was still small, and I was still able to reach out to them with a cold email and get them to say yes. These are the guest pitch templates that you want. Okay. And people charge upwards of $600 for that. So that's a $597 value by itself. Plus, you also will get Master the Gram. That's my dedicated Instagram program. Every time I update that mini course, you will get access to that as well. So you'll have lifetime access to Master the Gram, which by itself, if you went over to my site and just bought Master the Gram, it's a $297 value. All right. And the last thing that is included is Goal Getter Action Plan. So this is another mini course, which by itself is $98. This is my system that I use to side hustle and do my podcast and keep it all together and in check. And you get that included. You can think of that like your planner for how you're going to structure your time. That is included, and any further future updates are included inside of Podcast Moguls. And if you're not keeping track, I added it up for you. The total value of this is $8,553, but that is not what Podcast Moguls cost. It doesn't even cost the regular price. There's a promotional price right now. Okay, so the regular price of Podcast Moguls is $3,000. And today, for coming to today's class, it's actually at the promotional price of $997 when you pay in full. But you also have the option to do the $250 payment plan. So now I'm going to go ahead and drop the link so that you can get started and getting the fast action bonuses and joining Podcast Moguls. Why? Because you're about to get an opportunity that only people who come live get, which is the opportunity to get a one-on-one call with me. So hold on right now. I'm dropping the link for y'all. All right. And just make sure that works for me, somebody. But I'll also put the direct, I will also put the direct checkout as well, just in case that's giving you any issues. So essentially, These are the same price, by the way. If you want to join pay in full, or if you want to join with the payment plan, it's only a nominal difference. Why? Because I want you to pay what is comfortable for you and what works best for your budget this month. But you are still going to get the same thing whether you pay in full or you do the 4 monthly payments of 250. Pay in full, your 4 monthly payments, you'll get monthly live coaching sessions, annual community access, all of my sponsorship pitch letters and media kits, my guest pitch templates, plus Master the Gram, plus the Goal Getter Action Plan. All right. The only difference is in when you pay. So the fast action bonus, if you enroll in the next 48 hours only, you will get some extras. Okay. So number one is a one-on-one phone call with me for the first 5 people to register only. So you can finally quit playing, like I keep telling you, and get your podcast into the world. Start growing it to start getting over whatever bottleneck you have right now. So the first 5 people only, when you join right now today, you will get that one-on-one phone call with me, your one-on-one strategy session, which, by the way, is recorded. We do it on Zoom. I send you recap notes and next steps. You get to watch the replay back whenever you want to. It is a true strategy session. So you want to make sure you get this, okay? And then the other fast action bonus is my exact podcast workflow template. So I have been podcasting, like I said, next June will make 10 years. I've published an episode every single week. It is no easy feat. And this workflow template will help you to streamline your production and publish consistently without overwhelm. Plus, you'll also get my podcast equipment starter kit. So this is my curated list of affordable, high quality gear. So you can sound like a pro from day one. All right. This is my podcast closet that's pictured. I also podcast from this nook in my bedroom. So I'm going to show you how I do it, sound and look professional from home. And you can too. And then I'm going to give you my cold email pitches. So these are my pitches that landed me my first $4,000 in sponsorship, and my pitch email that landed me my first international speaking engagement in Barbados. So if you want to know how to send really effective emails that get you what you want, then you need this fast action bonus. And then finally, you're going to get my 5-day branding blitz. So this is where I share with you the strategies that landed me in these top charts. Straight out the gate, week 1 of podcasting. This I sell by itself for $297, but with your fast action enrollment, you will get this included and you will see this come to you in an email right after. All right. So these are your extras. These are your fast action bonuses. I would love to have you inside of Podcast Moguls. I would love to help you launch, grow your show into a true platform. And for joining in the next 48 hours, you will get these extras: a one-on-one call with me so you can jumpstart your process, my podcast workflow template, my podcast equipment starter kit, my cold email pitches, and my 5-day branding blitz. So we're about to get into Q&A, y'all. But when you join, do let me know in the comments so I can give you a whoop whoop. All right. Oh, but before we get into a fast action bonus, I want to remind you of something, okay? Well, before we get into Q&A, I should say, I want to remind you of the equation I used, because I know when it comes to investments, right, it can be something that it's a thing where you really have to think about where you are in your life and what your plans are, right? So for me, I use an equation that I call the would it be worth it to you equation. So would it be worth it to you if I used that when I was investing in the sponsorship intensive, because I'd never spent that type of money in my life for my side hustle, right? So I said to myself, would it be worth it if I was able to make this money back with my first sponsorship pitch? And I 4X that, right? With that $4,000. So for you, you might say, would it be worth it to you if Podcast Moguls helped you build your exit plan? Like finally really get a plan together to get off this soul-sucking path, or a path you no longer want to be on, or your next chapter after retirement, whatever it is. Would being able to live life on your own terms be worth it to you? Yes? Then definitely head over to sidehustlepro.co/podcast moguls. Oh, thank you for letting me know you don't see the link. I'm so busy yapping, I didn't even realize. And I try not to go into the chat all the time because I want to focus, right, y'all? So thank you for letting me know. Register here. Okay. I'll put it twice just in case. Go on over and make sure you can grab that fast action bonus. And while I'm here in the chat, let me know if the link works too. Because I'm solo dolo right now. I'm my own tech person. I'm my own presenter. So let me know. Okay. But yeah, this is the real equation I use for everything, because being a business owner, this is one of the first things, business 101 that I'm going to teach you too when I make decisions about investments, because there's so many shiny objects out there. Should I do this? Should I do that? Should I do a new website? And for me, it's always, what are the revenue generating activities that are going to help me build the skill? Once I have this skill, and once you have the skill of really knowing how to pitch sponsors, how to launch a moneymaker, that skill can never go away. So you're investing in a skill, and you're investing in skills and understanding of how to do this path, of how to be a podcast business owner. So Shannon says, I just signed up, but I use the site that's listed on the screen now. Then you should be good, Shannon. I'll check 1 second right after I finish presenting. Okay. So welcome. I can't wait for our one-on-one call. All right. Come on down, y'all. And in terms of, would it be worth it to you if Podcast Moguls helps you build your exit plan? This, by the way, is what happened to Lori Tharps. So Donna, come on down. Welcome, Donna. Whoop, whoop. So Lori, her fuller story is that she actually quit her job as a tenured professor. And if you know anything about tenure, that means they basically can't fire you. Like, that is job security. Okay. But she wasn't happy, and she wanted to write. She wanted to be an author. That is what she did on the side. So she came up with a plan. And then she said she launched a podcast using her moguls training that is pretty much a sales funnel to attract creative writing students and coaching clients. Okay. She actually left her job and moved to Spain in 2021 and hasn't looked back, living in Spain, her dream life. Look how relaxed she looks. And she moved in the middle of this pandemic, okay? And she hasn't looked back since. And she's hosting writing retreats. She has her online sanctuary writing group, and she has one-on-one clients. It's amazing. All because of this podcast. So that's what's possible. And remember, note she said using my moguls training, right? So she came in with one podcast, but because she has this training that she can go back to, again, the skill set and the lifetime access, she was able to say, you know what? I want to do something, scratch the record. I want to do something completely different. And that's what she did. So you always have it to go back to. You always have me as a resource. You always have that muscle. And that's what I teach podcasters. I teach you the muscle, the money-making muscle. So you could also ask yourself, would it be worth it to you if Podcast Moguls helped you land major sponsors for your podcast? Finally, at last, figure out how to get some sponsorship, right? Would getting approached with sponsorship opportunities be worth it to you? Yes. Then come on down, because that's exactly what happened to Tolu of the UI Narrative podcast. And we didn't see it coming, right? She's focused on following the steps, coming in with just an idea, going through, refining her podcast, refining her name, refining her perfect listener, launching. Boom. Google comes calling. Like, all because she followed the formula that I teach you. That is what's possible. So would that be worth it to you? Then definitely come on over, sidehustlepro.co/podcast moguls. Come on down. I would love to welcome you in. You said you used the link on my website. All right, y'all are even faster than me. Okay. I think that should be the way. I'll tell you in a section if you're good. And as you know, the only way to learn is through action, y'all. That's it. That's the only way to learn, is through action. It's not going to come from sitting on the sidelines or reading anymore. It's through action. So this is what happened to Nia Clark. She came into Podcast Moguls with a completely different podcast, and through going through the program, actually launched a completely new podcast called Black Wall Street 1921, Dreams of Black Wall Street. And within 4 months, she surpassed 100,000 downloads. I didn't even do that in 4 months, right? Came out the gate hot. Why? Because she learned how to research a topic that would get found. She learned how to research her audience so they could find her, and she understood what they wanted to learn. And she came out the gate with that hot podcast that did those kind of numbers. And She said, when I started the podcast, I didn't even know how it would be received, right? Because she's talking about the Tulsa race massacres, it's talking about race in America, but it was so needed and so well received that the popularity of her show prompted BBC News to reach out to her, interview her, and produce a 4-minute short video with her narrating the story of the Tulsa race massacre. So again, a magnet for opportunities. Look at the different opportunities that we've been talking about today, right? Magnet for clients with Lori, magnet for sponsorship with Tolu, magnet for speaking engagements being flown out with Fritz and Nia, BBC, magnet for news and press to reach out to you to narrate something that's internationally broadcast, globally broadcast. Like, these are the type of things that you are able to set yourself up for when you follow the formula. So really, really, really encourage you to join Podcast Moguls today, because I would love to work with you and help you do more than what you're currently doing. Option one, as I mentioned, is to join for $9.97, and option two is for monthly payments of $250. And here's everything you're getting. Again, you're getting monthly live coaching sessions with me. The next one is coming up. It's every fourth Tuesday of the month. So the next one is still coming up. You get annual community access. You get all of my sponsorship pitch letters and media kit. You get my guest pitch templates. Plus, you get Master the Gram. Plus, you get the Go Getter Action Plan. Like, what? Well, $8,553 value for $9.97, or 4 payments of $250. Like, that's honestly a steal, if I do say so myself. Oh, and remember, these fast action bonus will go away in the next 48 hours. So make sure, if you want any of these things, one-on-one phone call with me so you can jumpstart your process. First 5 people only. Make sure you join right now or within the next 48. Okay. You're also going to get the podcast workflow template, the podcast equipment starter kit, my cold email pitches, my 5-day branding blitz. All of these things are going to be included. So I'm going to stop the share for a bit just to check on you guys who have joined and make sure everything went smoothly. Pamela is signing up. Welcome, welcome, Pamela. I can't wait to work with you. And congrats again on already having started your show. You're already ahead of the game. So I'm really proud of you already for doing that. And everyone else, let's jump into Q&A. Let me know what questions you have. We're about to go through them one by one. And thank you again for joining. Matter of fact, I'm going to turn off okay, yes, I see you guys. You guys are good. All right. So everyone who has joined, you are good. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording. So shout out to replay viewers. I'll see you later.